Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A number of big stories we're tracking. So big news for the brothers Cuomo. We will break all of that down. The very latest and why CNN may have actually moved this time when they did nothing in the past. Big election shaping up for governor of Georgia with major implications for both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and the influence of Trump in that party and all of that stuff. So we'll give you the details there. Lots of court analysts. Lots of court watchers saying that Roe versus Wade may actually be overturned. We'll break down the arguments that were being made by the conservative justices that are leading so many analysts to think in that direction, and also what are the potential political implications of that landmark decision being overturned. Disappointing jobs numbers out last week, although it may not be quite as bad as it looked at the top line figure. We'll break down all that data. Trevor Noah making some news.
Telling the truth and then people getting mad at him.
Actually saying something decent for once. Still not really all that funny. But
Yes.
Anyway, let's start with the Cuomo brothers.
Yes. Oh, this is just so much, Krystal. It gave us great joy. Of course, we reported to everybody that Chris Cuomo was indefinitely suspended last week. Well, over the weekend, CNN actually hired an outside law firm. And after a single day of investigation, said, quote, additional information came to light and they fired him unceremoniously. The best part is Jim Acosta was forced to read the firing statement on CNN's air. It just gives me great joy. Let's take a listen.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And we have breaking news to report to you right now about CNN anchor Chris Cuomo. Earlier this week, Cuomo was suspended from CNN after documents revealed he had been involved more than previously known in shaping his brother, former Governor Andrew Cuomo's defense. Chris Cuomo, we should point out, has now been terminated here at CNN. That's the latest breaking news about what's happening here at CNN. I want to go to CNN.
Oh, there you go. They actually went to Brian Stelter for a reaction, which is kind of
Stellar
incredible.
analysis, I'm sure.
I'll read you guys the full statement and let's put it up there on the screen, please. Chris Cuomo was suspended earlier this week pending further evaluation of new information that came to light about his involvement with his brother's defense. We retained a respected law firm to conduct a review and have terminated him effective immediately. While in the process of that review, quote, additional information has come to light. Despite the termination, we will investigate as appropriate. Cuomo then put a statement out. Let's put his statement up there on the screen, please, where he said, well, this is not how I want my time at CNN to end, but I've already told you why and how I helped my brother. So let me now say, as disappointing this is, I would not be more proud of the team at Cuomo Primetime, the work we did as CNN's #1 show in the most competitive time slot. Not saying much, by the way. I owe them all and will miss that group of special people who did really important work. As you said, Krystal, not a single word of apology. The only real acknowledgement there of the people who worked for him are now screwed because he screwed around while trying to help his brother. But honestly, a pretty surprising turn of events, from my opinion. I did not think they would actually fire him. I mean, he's gotten away with this for years, right? I mean, I've pointed out here, he's been having Andrew Cuomo, his brother, on his television network since before the days he was even at CNN, hired in 2013, while he was at ABC News interviewing Andrew Cuomo. While he was, at the top of the network, again, a grain of salt, but still interviewing his brother. Routinely, it was greenlit by the very top and the new executives and more. And I assumed they were going to, if Jeffrey Toobin can get away with masturbating on a phone call, or a Zoom call and, still only get 3 months punishment before he gets to come on and somehow talk about abortion on their air, I'm like, okay, this guy will probably survive. But my personal opinion is that new management was like, that's it, he's got to go, no questions.
Zucker's on his way out. And then, of course, the thing that was very intriguing in the CNN statement is that they found even more that had been revealed. And just to remind you guys of what had already been revealed, we already knew. First, we learned, he'd been on some phone calls.
Yes.
Then we learned, he may have helped to draft some statements. Yeah. Then we learned, and this was the thing that led to the initial suspension, that I, like you, thought it was a way for them to take some of the heat off. They'd wait an appropriate amount of time, and then they'd bring him back in, which probably was their intention.
I think you're right.
But what came out there is that he had been using his professional and journalistic resources not only to try to track down info about what shoe was going to drop next, when the next Ronan Farrow piece was going to come out, and how many women were going to be involved, involved, but also to try to dig up dirt on at least one of his brother's accusers. And very clear from the exchanges as well that he knew what he was doing was not okay because he's texting Melissa DeRosa, delete this thread. So all of his protestations about, it's my brother and family first, and I just didn't even think that there could be anything wrong. I didn't even think about myself, the professional implications. Come on. You knew what you were doing was wildly inappropriate. But these guys, they get so arrogant.
Yeah.
Because he really
Well, he got away with it for so long.
He got away with it all for so long. I am positive this is not the first time that he was consulting his brother and helping his brother behind the scenes
100%.
in this manner. This is the way he's been operating for years and getting away with it. Number one, because he's very influential. Even if his ratings aren't amazing, these guys are very influential with elite circles. Number two, close buddies with Zucker. And number three, he'd already seen the pattern of how Zucker had handled this in the past, basically sweeping it under the rug and not really caring. So I think the straw was probably a couple things. Number one, seems pretty clear he lied to CNN.
Yes, he straight up lied to his employers.
And so that's a hard thing, especially if this is someone who's supposed to be your buddy, supposed to be your friend, and you realize they've been lying to you and making you look like an idiot and an asshole. That's a hard thing to overcome. And then the fact that you also have Zucker on his way out and new management on its way in that may not be quite so buddy-buddy with Cuomo at a time when their ratings are trash. So, you know, the fact that you're the highest rated guy on the network doesn't really weigh that heavily anymore. I think all of those pieces together contributed to this moment. But there's also one other piece we wanted to bring into the conversation, which is, again, the most intriguing part of this is this idea the investigation almost immediately revealed
within 24 hours of
additional
hiring this law firm.
information that of something that he had done. Well, one potential direction is not about his brother's improprieties, but potentially about his own. Let's go ahead and throw this tweet up on the screen. So News, in a statement, attorney Deborah Katz says that CNN fired Cuomo one day after she arranged to provide CNN's outside attorneys with documentation of allegations that he had sexually harassed a client of hers. She cites hypocrisy of Cuomo telling viewers that he cared profoundly about Me Too. And we did already know, remember, this guy kind of got glossed over, but there was that op-ed that came out where he was caught dead to rights grabbing a married woman's ass in front of her husband.
Yeah, and apologized.
So this wasn't like he said, he apologized for it. She had the email. So it was, pretty well proven. And generally speaking, when someone engages in that type of just like blatantly inappropriate behavior, it's probably not the first and only time that has happened.
I completely agree with you. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, especially in a workplace,
and
especially with your boss.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of especiallys that come into play here. Look, I mean, the really interesting thing was Brian Stelter basically saying the quiet part out loud on his show over the weekend. We didn't want to play it for you because we didn't want to force you to listen to too much CNN. But essentially, even I have a limit.
We got Trevor Noah later, so we're really begging your patience.
Hard limit on what I have to listen to while we're bringing you guys the news. But Stelter said this, which is that he was a headache. And I loved the openness of it because it wasn't like he did this stuff that was wrong. It was like, man, he called it death by 1,000 cuts. He just continued to cause headaches for the CNN network. Headaches. And remember, Stelter is the man who apologized for him in the past when he was on Stephen Colbert's show saying, this is such a crazy situation. I mean, it's just never happened before. It's like, no, actually, conflicts of interest are incredibly common in the news business. Part of the problem with the news business, your own network has had to deal with it many times in the past. It was clear that they just let all of this go. I think all of this really comes back to this. It is a major indictment of Jeff Zucker's leadership, period. Allowing Andrew Cuomo to come on CNN, Chris Cuomo's show, and tout his accomplishments when all the times were good and he was having the good press, and then disappearing him whenever the bad press was happening is a blatant, it's so difficult to even describe how much of a breach of ethics, of appearance for a purported mainstream news network that it could possibly be. There's just no way that you can be impartial one way or the other, which is why there was supposed to be a hard policy. And the second is this: Cuomo didn't happen in a vacuum, just like with sexual assault or harassment or whatever that's been alleged. His misconduct and his, the blatancy in which he conducted himself happened because at the end of the day, he thought he could get away with it. I don't blame the guy for trying to help his brother or for wanting to help his brother, but he should have felt constrained by the organization that he worked with hard rules from upper management that, hey, you will get fired if this type of thing happens. In the past, when Jeff Zucker was confronted with the previous facts, Krystal, which were enough to fire him, he said punishing him would just be punishment for the sake of punishment. What does that even mean? Number one, that's not even English. But number two, that is exactly why he thought he could get away with it, lie to his face, and get away with it. I still think that if they didn't have a new CEO in terms of discovery and management over CNN, I still think Chris Cuomo wouldn't have been fired over this.
I mean, listen, it's pretty astonishing what he was able to get away with for so long. And this idea of, oh, I'm just there for my family first. Look, I think we can all relate to that family loyalty feeling, but you also have a responsibility to your audience.
Yeah, correct.
And that gets left out of the equation entirely. So, okay, if you need to be there for your brother in this moment and that's your number one priority, resign or take a leave of absence rather than compromise the integrity of what you're supposed to be doing there. A couple other things. I mean, number one, just from being around some of these cable news scandals myself, when Stelter referred to 1,000 cuts, one of the things was that some of Cuomo's staff on a show really didn't like him. And this is the thing that, ultimately saw it with Matt Lauer, saw it with Keith Olbermann. When you've got a star, when there's a chink in the armor, if your staff hates you, the knives are going to come out.
Twist the knife.
The knives are going to come out. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I just can't help but reflect on the incredible downfall of these two men, two of the most well-known, powerful, influential, tied into elite circles in all of New York, who were riding high just not so long ago. And now Andrew Cuomo is no longer governor. Any sort of political future, highly uncertain. More and more damaging information continues to come out about him. And Chris Cuomo out of his prime time slot at CNN, where again, look, we make fun of the ratings all the time in the post-Trump era, but the reality is that cable news, especially on CNN and MSNBC, extremely, extremely influential in this town.
No question.
So the dramatic downfall of these two individuals who come from a storied family and have these deep ties into every influential circle in New York is pretty astonishing to watch.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And, all eyes on who's going to succeed him. My bet's on Don Lemon.
Oh, you think?
Oh, yeah.
I saw rumors about Tapper.
Maybe. I mean, he's based here in Washington. DC hard news stuff doesn't generally play for the primetime audience. They generally don't like to do that. It's certainly possible, but in the Biden years, politics is so boring, at least in the way that they are reporting it. Their January 6th stuff, which is Tapper's specialty. I don't see him succeeding in that network. They need somebody bombastic.
Lemon is extremely low rated.
He's terrible. Listen, we're talking about both men who are awful.
Yeah, but taking aside my own judgment of them and their ideology or whatever, he's very low rated.
Yeah,
he's catastrophically low rated in his time slot. So against much less competition than Cuomo's in the 9 p.m. slot, which is against Maddow and Tucker, which are the only two people in cable news. Again, these are normative, moral judgments and endorsement of their views. That's not what I'm talking about. But they're two of the only cable news hosts that actually have audiences that show up for them that I think could succeed outside of the cable news ecosystem in an actual free-for-all for audience. So it is a tough time slot. I don't know. I think it would be a foolish decision to put Lemon in just because you already know he's not performing well, even in a much easier time slot.
They could do the reshuffle then, move Anderson Cooper from 8 to 9, and then give the 8 p.m. slot to a Jake Tapper or somebody, because 8 p.m. is not as competitive as 9, so I guess it would make sense. This is cable news thinking. We don't have to worry about it.
Right, and the other thing is, remember Tapper was the one who early on was like, I don't see any world in which
Right.
people think what he
Oh.
did is appropriate.
Tapper's been gunning for that slot for a long time.
He's been gunning for it,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't be surprised to see them slot him in there. So we'll see.
There we go. We'll see.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.